All right, we are back with another solo episode of Come Together. Um, I am always excited for these. I mean, that's not true. I used to not be excited for these, but in the last couple of weeks, I guess, months, maybe month or two, I've kind of gotten more enthusiastic about recording these. Um, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. I have a lot on my mind. I have a lot that's constantly going on. The good news, I guess, about living in a world that's constantly flowing with information all the time, just overwhelming us if we don't if we don't keep a handle on it, is that there's so much going on constantly. There's so much that you can learn from, and so much you can do, and so much in general that if you don't get overwhelmed by it, and you can kind of help navigate, you can control yourself and try to navigate and put some blinders on. You can really do and accomplish and learn a lot of really cool things. It's been good. Last week was a great week for the podcast, in my opinion. I got I think 4 or 5 episodes in with 4 or 5 different guests. Very happy about. Um, and then there was one day where I recorded with Ari Mendelo and Andrew Weintraub in the same day, and that was almost 5 hours of recording, and I was zonked from that. It just really drained me. It was so tiring. And I don't know how Lex Friedman does these, super, super, super long podcasts straight, especially sitting the whole time. Because one thing that I found is, I mean, until I build this up enough and get a studio and start doing these podcasts in person, is one thing I've found is that it's really, it's a lot it's very hard to sit still and think and keep on making up conversation. I love to pace. I love to walk around, and it's become harder. It's becoming harder and harder for me to just sit in one spot for several hours and do it. I don't think people are meant for that. I know that I'm not meant for that, at least. So what is going on in my mind? I'm reading an incredible book right now called American Cartel: Inside the Battle to Bring Down the Opioid Industry by Scott Hyam and Sari Horowitz, who I presume are Jews. Sounds Jewish to me, at least. And um, and this book is incredible. It chronicles, I think, starting from around 2005 or six, the DEA's mission in trying to get the opioid epidemic under control. And it's really, really, really fascinating. It's heartbreaking, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating to see how these kind of things work from the government's perspective and from the big pharmacies' perspective. And I mean, obviously, in this particular case, I kind of feel like the DEA is a little bit more on the right. I kind of support their trying to clamp down on enormous pharmaceutical companies indiscriminately shipping opioids to anyone that fills an order. Um, and a lot of times the problem was, I was actually talking to my grandfather about this the other day. He and I were hanging out all day Sunday, and we're talking about a lot of things. He's a retired gastroenterologist, and he always obviously has a lot of faith in medical institutions, which is probably a little bit more of an old school perspective, I think, at this point. I mean, he's in his 80s, and I was telling him about this book that I was reading, and he's like, "Well, if the doctors are prescribing them, then obviously the patients probably need them." And I said, "You're totally right, but what happens when patients go to five, six, seven, eight doctors, and each of the doctors are filling the prescription without checking to see, and what the patient's history is in terms of medication, how much he's getting, how often he's getting, and from whom. What is he seeing any of the doctors? Is he seeing just this one specialist? Um, and obviously, there are also incentives tied in with prescribing more medication. So this book is I really really like it for a couple of reasons. I've actually noticed a couple of patterns when it comes to these type of books, which I guess you'd call investigative journalism. but journalism in general, where and what's his name does this? Walter Isaacson, who writes all those famous biographies: Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Einstein, um, and a bunch of other ones. And one of the things that I really, really, really enjoy that helps for me at least to keep a book easy enough to focus on. It's a really cool art, actually. It's the art of having a lot of content and being very, very detailed, but breaking down the chapters into very digestible pieces of information. So chapters are short. Chapters are probably, anywhere between 2 and 7 or 8 pages, which is not long at all. Even though the book is 350, 400 pages, um, the benefit is that you can really feel like, okay, let me just read one more chapter, and it wraps up, it introduces a point and it wraps it up, and it leaves it very clean and very complete, for the audience. And I think that that way of writing, probably in today's world, probably because of a smaller, or I guess a lower attention span, um, it's really necessary, and it really helps me. It really helps me because if I'm reading a book, a lot of times, and maybe it's just the way that I think I grew up, but I like to read based on like, okay, how many chapters am I going to read today? Or I start reading a chapter and look, how many pages is in this chapter? And I'm flipping through the book, and I'm like, oh my God, there's so many pages left in this chapter. I should just put it down. And a lot of times I end up putting it down and end up not getting back to it because it feels almost like it's labor, like it's just, oh my God, it's so much work to just read through this chapter. But I found myself reading the equivalent, or probably even more, of what I'd be able to do in one sitting because of the fact that these books are broken down into such short chapters that I feel like, okay, I'm getting information, I'm learning, and then it doesn't require a massive amount of time. And then I actually end up spending more time than I probably would with other books, reading, because, oh, just one more chapter. Oh yeah, this next chapter is just 2 or 3 pages. Yeah, let me go for that as well. And I kind of keep on going. So really, 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 a job super well done so far. I just finished the book is written in 2 parts. I have it actually in front of me, so I'm going to. The first part is called "This Is War," and the second part is called "The Reckoning." And so I just finished the first part. I flew through it. It was really, really wonderful. And now I'm up to the second part, and I have really high hopes for. I think the book ends, or the book ends in the year 2022. That's when it was published. So pretty much present day, as modern as it could really get. And it's a ton of fun. And one of the things that I found myself thinking about while I was reading the book was trying to think about, because the government is not always the good guy and it's not always the bad guy, and corporations are not always the good guys and not always the bad guys. And it's kind of a really cool, um, tug of war when it comes to, I think governments and corporations, historically, at least in America, have had this tug of war for power and opinions, and and who's running the show, and in this particular case, uh, you kind of feel like you have to be on the DEA side. One of the department, the drug, oh no, what does the DEA stand for? Drug Enforcement, Agency, maybe. I don't remember off the top of my head, and I don't want to ruin my flow of consciousness by stopping and looking it up. So I gotta look it up. But either way, at this point, I'm more pro DEA in this story than I am obviously the big pharmacies that are selling these opioids, especially, or pharmaceutical companies rather. Although it goes down to pharmacies and doctors too. I think it's one of these situations where pretty much everyone along the chain of command is at fault just because it's so insanely lucrative. It's such a it's such a moneymaker. But obviously, when it comes to conflict of interest between making money and people's livelihood and well-being, historically we haven't really cared very much about people's well-being relative to the amount of money that they can produce for us. So that's really kind of just what I've been thinking about it. The book also exposes in a very, very scary way, just how tied up um, in bureaucracy and in corruption general agencies and corporations and governments are. To clarify, the notion of a revolving door, which is not a, I mean, I can't even imagine how anyone would really call it a conspiracy theory at this point because it's so well documented. And there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of cases of people that have spent years working for the government on one, for one purpose or one job, and then going over to the private sector and actually representing everyone that they've been litigating against or suing or trying to create bills and laws against them to protect the people. And there's an enormous amount of people going back and forth constantly, which is scary. And hopefully something that, and this is actually one of the things, I'm, I really, I've said this before and I'll continue to say it. I'm not as much of a Donald Trump fan as I am of a fan of the people that he's working with. And it's not, it wasn't just that I'm excited for a Trump presidency. I'm excited for a restart and a fresh and exciting and new look at the way that the government impacts and decide, and impacts regular everyday citizens, taxpayers. And so it's really, really fun. It's really, really interesting. But this book really exposes an enormous amount of that type of corruption. And, you have guys that are DEA lawyers or people that run operations for 20, 30 years of their lives, of their career. And everything that they've been working on, they get fired or they get, laid off or they get pretty much stripped of all power and authority to do anything because someone else that worked at the DEA now goes over to Purdue Pharma or to McKesson or one of these other big companies. And so this book does a really, really wonderful job of at least exposing that and bringing awareness to it. I really would strongly recommend it. Along that same train of thought, I don't want this podcast to be political, and not only do I not want it to be political, even if it will be, I want it to be thoughtful, and I I'm truly, truly, truly terrified of the fact that that the Biden administration essentially just gave. Maybe, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm misunderstanding this. I hope everything that I'm reading online is not the case, although I've been seeing it from a bunch of different news sources, including mainstream media and independent Twitter journalists and podcasts. So if everyone's saying the same thing, it's usually a pretty good indication that it's probably true. That the U.S. is officially allowing Ukraine to use U.S. missiles to penetrate deeper into Russia, and Russia is essentially calling this an act of war. And oh man, it is deathly terrifying to me. It really, 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 really is. Um, because this is just another example of what we're talking about, of where people are making decisions on behalf of American people that are going to affect, that could ostensibly and very realistically affect our lives, affect my life. And the last thing that I want is, while I'm trying to raise a family, pursue a meaningful and fulfilling life here in South Florida, for someone in DC to tell someone in Ukraine to go ahead and do something that's going to lead to me and my family and my loved ones and everything just being completely, just potentially destroyed. And I mean, even if the war is not nuclear, like I don't think Americans, at least myself, and anyone most people that I'm friends with, want war. I mean, you could say what you will about Russia, you could say what you will about whether you agree with them or disagree with them, or whether you like them or not, and whatever Putin is, but we don't want to fight. Like we don't want to literally we don't need an excuse to escalate tensions in the world even more. And it feels like it's being done whether or not we like it. And it's um it's scary. And I really hope that and it's funny because I remember learning when I was younger, when I was in grade school, the term lame duck president, where essentially once a president loses and he has like, that kind of weird 2 month in between phase, he doesn't really do much because no one really takes what he has to say seriously. They know that he's not going to stay in office. And I mean, it seems that this current administration feels like they're trying to accomplish this at the very least before before the Trump administration makes its way into the White House, Congress, Senate, and all that. Um, so I just wanted to get that off my chest because that was really really I guess this was announced yesterday, and it's really been weighing on me, and I hope I'm wrong. I really would love to be wrong. There's a lot of things there's a lot of things in my life a lot of things in my life that I feel very strongly about that I really hope I'm wrong about because there's certain people that put more value. I think people in general, they're so I think being right is so important to them, and that they can't think of Riverside FM. You got to get your shit together. Seriously, this is a third time in a week that I'm on my iPhone. It's a new phone. I have good service. I have Wi-Fi, and every time that anything happens, it throws me out of the studio recording. So Riverside FM, get your shit together. US, get your shit together. Please, 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 please de-escalate. Please, please, please. It breaks my heart. It really does, and it scares the hell out of me. And I think it's a big enough deal. Like we have, I mean, you could say, oh, it's not a big deal, and what's really going to happen? What's really going to happen is that we already have 2 or 3 wars going on, big wars that America's involved with around the world, and I mean, we're just one small step away from being involved ourselves. Like whatever the risk is, if it's 10% or 5%, I want it to be zero, as close to zero as possible. And it just doesn't feel like that's going to be the case unless Trump could do something, unless the Trump administration could say, listen, this Biden administration is only here for a couple of months. Please, you know, if you do this, we are not, we're not going to back you. We can't allow you to do this. I don't know. Anyway, that's a little bit of what I was thinking about. My wife and I just watched American History X, the movie starring Ed Norton. I wish I knew who the writer was off the top of my head. American History X. Wow, that movie. We weren't at all ready for it. I don't think emotionally we were not prepared for how intense this movie was going to be, and also how relevant the movie was going to be. And the writing, obviously the acting was incredible. Ed Norton is Ed Norton was really, really, really spectacular. He was something else. And he was believable. He was scary. He was intellectual. He did such a great job at portraying someone that is intelligent and crazy at the same time. Just from like you really think that there aren't so many people like that. Like crazy people are crazy people, and smart people are smart people, and evil people we tend to like to think that they're crazy and that they're stupid. we like to think that evil people are crazy and stupid, and he shows in this movie that they're not. And not only does he show that they're not, but until he flies off the handle, he makes a lot of very I'm not going to say they're good arguments because they're not, but they could be persuasive. And I bet that that kind of person that he's portraying in the movie, if that individual wanted to consider, oh, before I even get into how what he's portraying, Ed Norton in this movie. This movie is about a a skinhead neo-Nazi that that essentially is obviously a raging racist. You know, he basically blames all the country's problems on race, and 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 you think like this guy is just he's just crazy and he's just shitty, and he ends up going to prison for killing a black guy. And while he's in prison, he gets, I guess, unbrainwashed, I guess would be the best way to put it. And but when he gets back from prison, he has a younger brother who he was his younger brother's hero, and his younger brother starts following in his footsteps as another neo-Nazi type of skinhead. He walks into his house. There are big posters of Hitler up in his room, white power, stuff like that. Really, really crazy. Um, but that movie came out, I think, in '98, and it it really, truly, truly was shocking to me, and it really, really, really jarred me. It really, 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 it blew me away. And I think it's a movie that is heavy, and I think that it's important, and I think that I would really recommend anyone watch it because it's important to I think at least it's important to kind of see what exists out there and what kind of evil perspectives exist out there, and forget about evil perspectives, what kind of intelligent evil perspectives are out there that you can, there's one thing, I was when I was studying in Israel for the year, I had a teacher, a rabbi, and he basically gave a class. It was the schedule of the school would go that you would learn for a couple hours in the morning. You'd study Talmud, you'd study, whatever, and then in the afternoon there were a bunch of really cool and fun classes on a variety of interesting topics. So you could talk about movies and Judaism, and he'd pick a bunch of movies like The Matrix or The Lion King or whatever it was that have, a lot of messages that are in line with what a lot of traditional Jewish values are. Or, and so one of the classes that we had was discussing the state of Israel and its existence, and all the good things and bad things. And one of the things that he said that, when we sat down in the first class was, in order to be able to to be intelligent and to have intelligent conversations, you have to be able to you have to understand and know what the people who disagree with you, what they think, the way that they think, and and really get in their heads in order to understand. And maybe it's, there's some things that they might, that are right, and some things that are wrong, and some things that might sit with you and some things that don't. But like, if you don't listen, if you don't talk it out, then I tend to agree with this idea in general, that the bad ideas fester. And it's interesting because it also happens in our own heads about ourselves and about our own lives. I guess I'll go back to that in a second. But so and there's a notion that, not to platform people or not to say certain things or not to allow people to say certain things. I think that if we allow people to say certain things, you can understand where they're coming from and whether or not they're coming from a good place or a bad place. And I think that generally speaking, we have to trust society. We have to trust people, that people are smart enough to decide what's considered moral or not, and what's considered valuable or not. And in that very same token, by the way, it's so interesting to me because I find that actually applies quite frequently to my own life in a more personal way and just about me being able to express ideas. So, for example, if I'm feeling down or I'm one of these, points in my life where I'm being very hard on myself, which is pretty often, I'm usually pretty hard on myself. If I don't acknowledge the thoughts, if I don't speak them out, if I don't talk to a friend, or if I don't write, or if I don't speak to my wife or my family about it, then the ideas build up and fester in my head, and they take a much more, I don't want to say dramatic, but they build up, and they become a lot a lot more pervasive and a lot more dangerous than if I just have vented it out and then I could talk about it and I could say, yeah, I know this makes sense, or I know this doesn't make sense, but I feel this way anyway. And then it kind of provides a space for me, for myself or people around me or anyone to counteract these bad ideas that I know aren't good ideas, but just getting them out and just speaking them out really makes an enormous difference in terms of my ability to handle it, and to recognize that these thoughts and these feelings are not true. They're not my life. They're not who I am. And so if we have these type of movies that are, I mean, it's really really unnerving. It's really really not pleasant to sit and to watch the intensity of Ed Norton's acting. I mean, he really embodies and becomes like this kind of guy, and everything about his body language, everything about the dialogue, everything about all this stuff is about the entire film is scary, because you can see how real it is, and you could see how true it is, and then you could say, but it's not. And then you could say, despite the fact that people feel this way, and despite the fact that people live their lives this way, and despite the fact that there's philosophies that are like this, you want more people to know about this to be able to counteract it than to pretend it doesn't exist and stick your head in the sand. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. And it's actually this is the kind of type of conversation, I think, that is much more nuanced and important to have. So, for example, right, the conversation about whether or not, like this conversation, like is suppression a better form of getting rid of an idea, or is free speech a better form of getting rid of bad ideas? Um, just in that, just that question alone. Um, at the end of the day, everyone's trying to get rid of bad ideas, right? So I think and it's really, really hard. I don't know how anyone can prove that one way works better than the other than literally just trying it out in person, So, you could try out. I'm not going to listen to anyone that says anything negative about politics. I'm not going to listen to anyone that says anything I disagree with about Israel Palestine, about America, about American missiles being used to bomb Russia, right? I'm not talking to anyone about it. It's bad, and I'm going to suppress all of the information that's against that. You could try that for a month, and then you could try talking about it and listening to it and seeing, whether or not your perspective or ideas or ideology are fortified or are strengthened or nuanced. Are they is your perspective better? Is your perspective worse? Is it different? Is it the same? Do you feel like you're more reinforced in your beliefs? Do you feel less reinforced in your beliefs? And if you're less reinforced, why is that? You know, um, that's a really important question to ask yourself. Like, why? What's so scary? Are you afraid that you're going to be wrong? Are you afraid you're going to change your mind? Are you, or is it just so disgusting and not appealing to you that you just don't want to hear it? Because I've found that I've really just in my experience and in my life, I've found that I've only benefited. I've changed my mind, and I've changed my mind before. I've become more aware of very uncomfortable and difficult facts or narratives that exist that I don't necessarily. That's not necessarily pleasant for me to listen to, but but I became a better person as a result of it, and I became a more nuanced person as a result of it. And I think we live in a world of very um, broad paint strokes. So it's called paintbrushes, broad strokes. I think it's broad strokes. We live in this world of mass generalization, and life isn't general, and life is not. I can't imagine anything being really more dehumanizing than just mass clustering a political group, a religion, a country, and just saying everyone is that. You could say a lot are, and then you could have a conversation about why a lot are. Um, it's something I've been noticing. Actually, I don't know if it's been bothering me. It has been bothering me. I'll say it's bothering me when everyone on Twitter calls everyone an anti-Semite. Anytime that you say anything against Israel or anything against, against Jews, and there's certain times where you can identify, whoa, that is that is anti-Semitic, and then there's a lot of other times where you're like, wait a minute, like just because you are American, or just because you are Jewish, or just because you are Israeli, or just because you are Palestinian, does not mean that there's not. I mean, there's literally millions and millions of people in lives that are that and perspectives that are all included in this one broad word. I'm American. Oh, Americans are so stupid. Yeah, I mean, maybe a lot of them are. I don't know, but a lot of us aren't, and it's a really dumb thing to do to just put everyone into one camp and to say that, and so I don't know. It's a really, really tough balance to find, and I think that A, people are very reactionary. B, I don't think that people are necessarily, especially people that are posting or trying to come up with news stories or trying to get clicks, are necessarily looking to be nuanced. But I think it's what we need. And I hope that eventually it feels to me that the tides have been turning in terms of what people consider to be quality and authentic material, journalism, and perspective. I think people are now looking for a lot more nuanced narrative because I think we're just been, generalizing for so long. Anyone that votes for Trump is a Nazi. Anyone that votes for Kamala is an idiot. I mean, where where does that get anyone? So I don't know. So that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about that, I guess, in conjunction with that movie, um, American History X, which again I would super, super highly recommend. I don't want this all to be about politics. Um, and so I will talk about something else. um, it's been, oh, I've been messing around with AI for the first time. ChatGPT in particular, although I haven't had a chance to really, I haven't checked out the other variations of AI. And I'm trying to figure out how to implement it as the best tool that it could be for me. I feel I still am a little, I've always been a little afraid of AI, and I still am. I'm very afraid of it. And I also, maybe naively, but probably not, maybe naively think that, if I ask it too many questions, provide it too much context, too much information, that it gets to just know a little bit too much about me and the way that I think and the way that I feel. That does scare me a little bit. But I tried using it just the other day, um, to help me actually learn more about music because one of the things that's been weighing on my mind, and I didn't even realize this until I wrote it out, but one of the things that it's been bothering me is right now I feel a little bit like my list of priorities have shifted, um, in terms of the way that I value my time and the way that I invest my time. And I have everyone has a hierarchy of things to do that are the most important to them. One of them would be, for example, like for me at least, I have family time, I have exercise, I have sales, I have teaching, and I have this podcast. And we'll say that those are, let's say, the top five priorities. And practicing guitar and being musical and being musically expressive used to be up there until I found that I got to the point that I was good enough to play music and a lot of music, but I wasn't good enough to be creative with it and to really advance my skills. Like I kind of hit like this weird wall where you're good, but you're not great. And to get to great, you're going to need a lot of help. And and I think there's a lot of people that learn really well from YouTube and they learn really well online. I don't learn really well online. I need things either broken down extremely simply to me because I get lost in processes, or I need another human to be there with me so I could I could do something and then read that person's mind or read that person's expression, body language, or hear some kind of validation to know, okay, I'm doing something right, doing something wrong. I'm going along, this is the right way to play this is the wrong way to play this. This sounds good, this sounds wrong. Uh, Obviously, as time has gone on, my own ear has kind of developed that. I used to not be able to tell, for example, when my guitar was out of tune at all, and I'd play with I'd play guitar with I'd sit down with my guitar teacher, and shout out to Shlomo Franklin, who's the man. I should get him on. He's been living in Nashville for the last like 3 years. I'm so curious as to how he's doing. I'm gonna text him. And he's an amazing teacher. He's sweet and he's patient and he has the same type of music that he likes. He likes a lot of the similar music that I do. We're both enormous Bob Dylan fans, and I would strum. I'd just give it a strum, and he'd be like, "Can you check your bottom E string?" And I'd be like, "What? Yeah, check your bottom E string. I think it's out of tune." And I'd open my tuner and I'd string, I'd pluck at it, and he was right. And how'd you know that? And then another week would be, "Can you just check your B string or your E string or your D string?" And and almost every single time he was right. And now I got to the point where I could tell that my guitar is not only when I could tell that it's out of tune, but generally speaking, I can have a pretty good idea as to which is based on what chord I'm playing, which is the string that's out of tune. And so I am impressed with myself, and I am happy about that. Um, but I don't, there has to be, I have to be better about it. I have to know more. I have to learn more. And I've been using ChatGPT just even yesterday, and it taught me already how, because recently I've been listening to a lot of blues. I love blues now, blues, soul, rhythm and blues, a lot of the 50s, 60s. Um, you know, I don't want to call them original because I know the blues started earlier than that, but a lot of the foundational blues, Muddy Water, Howling Wolf, Etta James, Ella Fitzgerald. I guess she's more of a jazz singer, but Aretha Franklin, a little bit more soul, blues, gospel, and this music is just incredible. And and it walked through step by step for me. Okay, you're gonna play this E7 string chord, and you're gonna play it for 12. And you're gonna play it for 4 beats. And I'm like, I don't know what a beat is. So it explained to me what a beat is, and I guess it has all the information that I need to access, and then I could help it teach me by pointing out little things that I don't understand or don't know, or that it may have taken for granted that I figured out, that it could now explain to me. And so I'm like, oh, that's what it means. It means, a beat would be, a bar would be 4 beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's okay. So play E7 for 4 beats, and then play A7 for 2 beats, and then play B7 for 2 beats. And I did it, and I was like, oh my God, This is amazing. I just played a blues song, and I didn't know how to make that sound. I knew those chords, and I knew the music that I wanted to make. I had no idea how to get it from my ear or from my head onto the guitar, and it did an incredible job helping me out. Um, I wanted I had I did other kind of research, like trying to break down what would be the one of the things I've wanted to do for the last 10 years or so is be a psychologist or be, some kind of therapist or certified psychologist. And I have a very love-hate relationship with school. I love the amount of time I spent in school, but I hated having to navigate academia and academic bureaucracy. And so I was trying to mess around with ChatGPT to see, what ostensible ways I would have, what paths there would be, what the steps could be, as simply put as possible for me to for me to get there. I don't even know if it's going to ever end up working out, but but I could apply this to really anything. And I think that there was a great post. I forgot who it was. I think one of the guys from ChatGPT, who maybe has since left the company. And one of the things he said was, now that you have, the real value of AI is not going to be in AI's power. It's going to be in learning how to use it. And so I think that's really, really a great point. And so I'm trying to familiarize myself with it. I still, I don't know. I feel a little weird about that. I don't entirely trust it. I don't entirely trust the people that run it. I don't really trust authority so much in general either way. Um, but yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there, man. It's pretty crazy. The one I was talking to a really brilliant and good friend of mine, Jason Fishman, just yesterday, and we're talking about AI a little bit. And one of the things that we said was, or that we agreed on, but I think the point that he brought it up was, the biggest problem that I think that we're about to experience as a species, as a people, as a world, is we're not going to know what's true. AI is just too confident in coming up with answers that just is not accurate, and because it's so convincing, we just take what it has to say. We don't ask it to double check. We don't ask it to confirm. We don't ask it at sources. We just, because it is kind of presented to us like this magic, knows all the internet, incredible computing machine with the power to have a nuanced conversation. We kind of just, and it writes very authoritatively, and it writes very professionally, and you're blown away by it. You have more of a tendency to believe it. He said the biggest problem is going to, in the future, is just going to be all this information is going to be given to us and presented so well and so thoroughly and so convincingly that we're going to have a hard time telling what's true or not. Um, which I guess, if you think about it, is kind of similar to what we're experiencing now with the breakdown of authority, excuse me, trust in authorities on the government level, on the on the medical level, on the journalistic level. We kind of had these big authorities that we just believed for so long, until so many things told, our eyes, our senses, our experience, our reality said, like, dude, this isn't actually what's going on. And yet to be able to open yourself up to hear that, and yet to be able to open yourself up to come to terms with it. So it's gonna be a ride. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be crazy. I'm very excited to see where. I'm nervous because it's the future and it's unknown. But where what the world is that my kids are gonna grow up in. I was talking to a friend of mine. He was like, and he was like, dude, our kids could be in the same class. And I was like, yeah, or they could go to space together or to Mars together and like live on another planet together. And like it's ostensible. It's really believable. I mean, by the time the kid's 50, so we're in 2024, almost 2025. By the time we're in 2075, we'll probably be at least getting to the moon. I don't know about living there and colonizing it, but our kids could be in space together. It's just it's a crazy world. And what happens next with humanity? What happens next with life? And what happens next with what is I truly believe that that part of evolution. There's a physical aspect to evolution, which was literally what it took for people to be people, and then you have the evolution of consciousness. And the evolution of consciousness is where things really get crazy, because we don't even know what we know what consciousness is able to do on such a primitive level, that if you have it develop for thousands of years, and I mean, and imagine what and thousands of years, just a blink of an eye in terms of a cosmic eye. um, it's really cool. It's really crazy stuff. It's a lot of fun, and it's fun thought experiments, and it's fun to kind of wander down these rabbit holes. I don't know. I don't know. This weekend is wrapping up my month without drinking alcohol, my dry month. I was going to go to Thanksgiving. I looked at a calendar and I was like, dude, Thanksgiving is 6 weeks from when I stopped, I think, or 5.5 weeks from when I stopped drinking. So I'm going to do the month for a couple of reasons. Number one, because I wanted to show myself that I could do it, and I did it. And it was not as hard as I thought. It was odd, quite frankly. It was just a change in lifestyle, but it was not like I missed being drunk. It's not like I missed alcohol. I did miss the taste of beer or different types of alcohol that alcohol that I like for different occasions. I missed going to a pub, getting a Guinness. Shout out to the Fields in Hollywood, Florida. Apparently, the second biggest consumer of Guinness in the state of Florida, and one of the biggest consumers in the state of Guinness in America. But yeah, I missed that environment, and I think that that environment really does a lot for people. And obviously, it's something that could be abused or something that could be utilized or implemented in a healthy way. And I think it was good to show myself that I did this. I'll probably do this again next year. Um, but it was really fun. It was a real treat, and it was hard to do, and it wasn't always pleasant. I kept on thinking to myself, I pretty much showed myself I could do it. I don't have to, I don't have to do it anymore. But there's something fun about making it to the finish line. And historically, it's actually funny that this is occurring now, because historically, I always have a hard time um, finishing the 100%. Like, I'll go 98% and be like the last 2%. Well, I'm pretty much there. I don't know why psychologically that would happen, or emotionally that would happen, but I got to be on top of it. So here we are, almost end of a month, solo episode, more episodes coming out this week, and I will see you all later. Bye, everyone.